Wake up, Africa, your time has come. Open up your eyes and see the sun. Open up your spirit.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, Africa.
Hello and welcome to Africa Watch on the Dr. Mumbi Show. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I pray you're well in all that you're doing and just, life is just awesome for you and you're living your best life right now. So much is happening on the African continent. Thanks to every single person that has subscribed to the channel. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to every single person that supports us through our Patreon and PayPal accounts. It's really enabled us to even start a new segment that we're calling the Africa Minute, where we'll be launching, because there's so much breaking news happening now and so many interesting things. So that's going to be, an African minute, which can be however long, right? So definitely keep an eye out for that. Now, there's a revolution happening in Sudan. A major revolution. It started in December 19th, and it started off as a bread revolution when, first of all, throughout the year, inflation had been rising in 2018, and by December, inflation in Sudan hit 72%. 72%. And so there was a huge rise in fuel prices, and then there was a huge rise in food because when inflation hit 72% by the end of 2018, Sudan could no longer pay for its food imports. And so it now had to, it had to raise the prices exponentially, but at the same time they also started limiting how much money people could withdraw a day, and I think you could only withdraw maybe $10 or $20 equivalent per day, and so this had people rioting, but then now it has morphed into a whole other situation where people are now calling for Bashir to go. And the interesting thing about this revolution, I'm calling it a revolution, guys are calling it street protests, whatever protest, but this is a revolution. And the reason I'm calling it a revolution is because Sudan has removed two previous governments in the same way. And Bashir he's abusing these guys. He's like, these rats need to go back into their holes, and they're anti-government, they're being sponsored by the West, the whole neo-colonial. Sometimes you don't know where you're part of the brotherhood, but you're accusing the same brotherhood of trying to get you out. Or is it being staged? Who knows? Nowadays it's so hard to tell, like, what's the underlying factors, and that's why I always say we always have to ask questions. So now what's happening is they've said Bashir must go. Bashir has been in power for 30 years and they're just tired. And this is what I was going to say. The interesting thing about this whole thing is being organized by engineers, by doctors, by nurses, by lawyers, and it started in one city in the north and then it quickly spread to 15 cities, and it's just it's just snowballing. And will it stop? These guys have said they're not stopping. Bashir has been heavily cracking down on the protesters, but this has not stopped them. I think over 600 protesters were actually arrested. His people have used live ammunition, live bullets and tear gas on the protesters. There's one young boy who died, who had over 14 bullets allegedly in his back. And it's just like, once people reach the point of no return, you can't put them in fear. Actually gives them this crazy courage. It doesn't, the fear doesn't make them retreat. The fear makes them keep going. And so, Bashir, he himself actually seized power in 1989 in a bloodless coup. And he has always been a divisive figure, not only because of many things, many, like how he seized power, but also because he was alleged to have been involved in the Darfur crisis. And with over 300,000, darker skinned Sudanese are alleged to have lost their lives in what was called a systematic genocide of the people. Now, a warrant was set out for his arrest, and he still has no, I think the warrant was sent out something So he was indicted by the ICC between 2009 and 2010, and a warrant was sent for his arrest. But despite the warrant, he continues to fly out, and since 2010 he's been on 150 trips in 8 years. Yo, and he's in his 70s, like he's not a young guy. And you know, he's accused of having arranged performed systematic apartheid against the black Dinka. But the economic woes of Sudan are much more complicated than that. They actually have something to do with the South Sudanese breaking apart. I'll be letting you know more right after this.
Africa.
Welcome back to Africa Watch on the Dr. Mumbi Show. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki, talking all about the revolution that is currently taking place in Sudan. It's been going strong since December 19th, and it's just gaining momentum. Now, the organizers of the protests have actually said that over 50 protests have been carried out across the country, and it's just increasing. And you know when you know a revolution is real? It's when you see even the women, even the Sudanese women are out there protesting what is going on. And, you know, will Bashir survive? Because he's taken a hard stance. He said he is not backing down. He is not going to resign. And either a military general takes over, or he'll face whoever wants to take power from him at the ballot, because he says it's the foreign neo-colonialists and the foreign globalists that want him out so they can get to, you know, Sudan's goodies. Now, I found it very interesting that actually, because he was in Egypt on Sunday, and he was talking about how he would hand over to someone of equal, he would hand over to a military colleague. I found that super interesting. Like, is he now starting to consider something? I don't know, because he's been abusing people left, right, and center, and he says, you know, the young men and women are trying to trigger an Arab Spring. They're not trying to trigger, Mr. President. It's already happening. Anyway, we'll have to see what happens. Now, the reason that Sudan is in the kind of, you know, financial quagmire it's in is because in 2010, so when Bashir took government in 1989, he actually now entered a civil war with the darker skinned South Sudanese. And let's not forget, Sudan actually means land of the blacks. Let's not forget that. And they fought, and then then there was a situation in Darfur. But what ultimately happened is South Sudan was kind of seceded off, you know, and South Sudan is actually currently the youngest nation in the world, and they were ceded off from Sudan, and they left with about 70% plus of all, you know, of all oil resources. Now, what had happened is historically Bashir used to tap into the oil in the south and send it all the way to the north in Khartoum. And so there was little to no development in South Sudan. Now, South Sudan, it's also having its own issues. Who's involved there, you know, has Sudan just been stoking those fires? Is karma now just slapping Bashir back in the face? We're going to have to look out for this, but definitely something is afoot in, you know, Sudan. We need to keep our prayers for the people and hope that everything turns out okay. I just love the resilience of the Sudanese people, that despite having Facebook cut off, despite having WhatsApp cut off, despite having Twitter blocked, they are still going, they're strong, they're still able to organize themselves. And I told you, we are in a new season, and this should just tell you, because the dictators across the continent are just being, you know, they're just being shaped. It's not business as usual. And we'll really, really have to see how everything works out, you know, because Bashir has given so many speeches. Like, after the protests broke out and they hit their, like, you know, climax, what he thought was a climax, he actually declared a state of emergency, so that now in Sudan there's a nightly curfew. And he gave 3 separate speeches in 4 days where he kept calling the protesters saboteurs and traitors. But once you get the middle class, you know, they always say the revolution is usually held back by the middle class, because they're too comfortable in the status quo, that even though they're being abused, even though they're being taxed, you know, too much, even though the government is a total beast, they will maintain and hang in there, because they're hoping that, you know, somehow they'll still be able to send their kids to those private schools, they'll still be able to change their cars every few years. But once you get doctors and engineers and lawyers actually not even joining a revolution, but actually mapping it out, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. And I really think that we're starting to witness the beginning of the end of Bashir's reign in Sudan. We'll have to wait and see what exactly happens, because the momentum, this whole thing is gaining so much momentum to the point where his ruling party's headquarters has been burnt down. And, it's just, I don't think abusing young people really helps you. I think that just makes the situation worse. Of course, we're praying that the situation doesn't disintegrate into a civil war and that Bashir will just leave quietly. Is it a New World Order agenda? Is it a globalist thing? You guys have my email, drmumbi@drmumbishow.com. Hit me up. Let me know what's really happening in Sudan. I'm calling it a revolution. What are you calling it?
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.